remember the time when Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob kidnapped Squidward's mom, and they were like hacking at the bag with a shovel, but it turned out it was actually Mrs. Puff in there, and Squidward's mom was helping as well. She's like, "Let me help you with that, boys," and then she dabs and then whip Nene so the trunk closed, and then SpongeBob was like, "Wow, you're so strong, Miss Squidward, Miss Testicles. I mean tentacles." And then Mr. Krabs is like, "Yeah, I know. We're definitely gonna make something out of this." And then they take Mrs. Puff, Mrs. Puffs or Mrs. Puff, and then they take Mrs. Puffs to Squidward's house. No, not Squidward's house. Mr. Krabs' house. And basically tie her up and put a video camera in front of her. And then what they're doing is they're live feeding it to Liam Neeson, who is actually the father of Pearl. I mean, Mrs. Puffs. Sorry. And basically what they're saying is, if you do not give us $1 million in cash and SpongeBob's boating license, then we will dab on Mrs. Puffs until she dies. And then the video stops. So what he does is that he calls Mr. Krabs on his cell phone, which is a BlackBerry Nickelback CD album that has like the number 1 drawn on it. And what he does is he pushes it 3 times, and then Mr. Krabs answers it like, "Hello, this is the Krusty Krab." And he goes, and then Neeson like, "I do not know where you are. I do not know who you are, but I've got 2 things, a ski mask and a boat. And what I'm gonna do with that is I'm gonna use that ski mask on the sea, put on the boat, and come down there and kick your bikini bottom." And then Mr. Krabs is like, "Yeah, I'd like to see you try, Liam dickhead." And then he dabs, and then he hangs up. Wait, hold on, I need to take a breath real quick. So then what happens is that Pearl comes in screaming, "Daddy!" And then Mr. Krabs is like, "What do you want, you fat bitch?" And then she's like, "Where the fuck is the mayonnaise?" And then SpongeBob was like, "It's up my ass." And then she's like, "The fuck, SpongeBob?" He's like, "I know, right? Lamau got him, dabs." And then Mrs. Puffs is like, it's right here." And then she holds it out, and then Pearl is like, "Wow, thanks, Mrs. Blow Up Doll." And then what she does is she grabs the tomato juice that SpongeBob had in his pocket and throws it at the mayonnaise jar, and what it does is that it fuses together and it creates Aang, the last airbender. And then it turns out that Aang is actually Liam Neeson. And then SpongeBob was like, "Oh my god, it's Liam Neeson." And then Mr. Krabs was like, "No, it's not. It's Liam Neeson. And then Liam Neeson, who's actually the son of Liam Neeson, has come to save his sister, who was Mrs. Puffs, also the boating school instructor. And he's like, "I'm here to kick ass and eat crabs, and I'm all out of ass." And then what he does is he pulls out his katana sword from a judo practice, and then he slices all 3 of them into 7 million pieces at once, and then unties Pearl by doing a triple backflip twirl through the air. And he's like, "No need to thank me, sister, that's just what family's for." And then he tips his fedora and sheaths his katana, and then what happens is they walk out through the door, and then Squidward's mom, who comes back from the dead, is like, "Wait the fucking minute." And then she's like, you wanna have a real fight?" And then what she does is she pulls out the Infinity Gauntlet, and what turns out is that SpongeBob is that within the sword that Liam Neeson's had was the last Infinity Stone. So what she did was she broke his sword, took this stone, and was like, this is for This is for my daughter, Squilliam Tentacles." And then she snaps her fingers, and then all of a sudden, SpongeBob comes back from the dead, and so does, wait, who was it that died in SpongeBob? Who was the guy who died? The number one. That number one guy. He rises from the grave and he's like, "Oh hey, that's cool, I'm back." And then what happens next is that SpongeBob whip Nene's his way through the door, all while doing the jellyfish mating call, which makes the king jellyfish burst through the roof. Like, yo, where the fuck is that bitch at? And then all of a sudden, Squidward comes through the door, like, "Mom, where the fuck is my sandwich?" And then Mrs. Puffs is like, "Okay, SpongeBob, you passed," and then she gave him his boating license, and that's how Waluigi came back in Avengers, the last fight for Icarus. And that's how Waluigi won the last fight for Icarus in the newest Avengers movie, where it was against Thanos and Gamora. Well, no, actually, now that I think about it, it turns out Gamora isn't actually Thanos' daughter. It's actually Thanos' daughter is actually Sandy Cheeks, the chipmunk thing from Boss Baby. Remember that part in Boss Baby where they go underwater and they find a dome and they're like, "Well, what's in there?" And they find Sandy Cheeks, and then he's like, "Wait a second, the fuck is going on?" And then it turns out that that's actually Tilted Towers from Battle Royale, and then all of a sudden they just start kind of disappearing into the wind, and that's how Toy Story 4 ends. Actually, that reminds me of another time when Squilliam Tentacles had to admit over live video footage while having a gun pointed to his head that he sucks egg. And the person who was holding the knife was Squidward. Yeah, that's about it. That's how the newest Avengers is gonna end.